What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 3. And in today's episode, we're going to be covering the last of the launch marksman rifles, and this is the MTZ Interceptor. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, and this gun hits really hard. As you can see, it's going to be a 2-shot kill anywhere in the body at any range, and even though we deal a bit less damage to the legs, that doesn't really matter. You can shoot them in the foot and it's still a 2-shot kill at 100 meters. Additionally, and I would say most importantly, this gun is a guaranteed 1-shot kill to the head or the neck at any range in the game as well, which is really where the true power of this gun comes in. It is just a headshot machine, and even if you end up aiming a little bit too low and hit the neck, you still get a 1-shot kill. But then let's have a look at our rate of fire, which is the slowest in the marksman rifle category, at least for Modern Warfare 3 marksman rifles, at 214 rounds per minute. And what this means is with that 2-shot kill, we're killing in 280 milliseconds, which is a very good time to kill potential in this game. Now, of course, since we do have a very low rate of fire though, this is a very unforgiving gun. If you're missing shots, your time to kill will spike very quickly. Of course, none of that really matters though if you just manage to land that 1 shot to the head or neck for a 0 millisecond time to kill. After that, let's get into our damage ranges, and while there are several damage range drop-offs with this, it really just doesn't matter because, like I said, it's a guaranteed 2-shot anywhere in the body at any range. And on top of this, our bullet velocity is very solid at 820 meters per second. Additionally, in hardcore game modes, I'm sure nobody will be surprised to see this. This is a guaranteed 1-shot kill anywhere in the body at any range. Then when it comes to Hipfire, this is right around average for the Modern Warfare 3 marksman rifles, which means it's not very good in the Hipfire department, and I would generally stay away from hipfiring unless you're in a really desperate point-blank situation. Next, let's have a look at our recoil, and technically, when you fire a shot, there's a decent amount of recoil with this gun. However, since the rate of fire is very slow, by the time you pull the trigger again, your point of aim will have recentered from the previous shot, and therefore you can just spam this at the maximum fire rate and have a pretty much pinpoint accurate gun. Most of the spread that you're seeing in that grouping is actually just from the idle sway of the gun. Now, let's get into our handling stats, and this is where we start to see the MTZ have some downsides. The aim down sight speed is a bit on the slower side for a marksman rifle at 265 milliseconds, and our sprint to fire time, this is also a bit below average for a marksman rifle, so you don't want to get caught, especially in a tactical sprint while using this gun. Additionally, our reload add time is a bit on the slower side at 1.79 seconds. It's not unreasonably slow, but you will have to take a little bit of extra time compared to the other marksman rifles in the game. And then let's get into our mobility stats, and across the board, it's pretty much just average for marksman rifles. There's no mobility stat with this that stands out in either direction. And there we go, that's gonna wrap it up for the base stats of the MTZ Interceptor. Really easy to just blast through because it's a pretty straightforward gun. Now let's get into some excellent attachment combinations I've got for you guys, and the first one I'm gonna share is my long-range accuracy build. And with this reason, the Corio Eagle's Eye 2.5x optic. You guys know I really like this optic if I am going to go for a longer range setup and I want an optic with a bit more zoom to it. We're also using the MTZ Blackthorn barrel primarily for the bullet velocity benefit we get from this, the T4LR Saber compensator for our muzzle, the SL Skeletal vertical underbarrel grip, and then finally the MTZ factory rear grip, which helps considerably with our flinch as well as our idle sway. So that one is actually quite important for an accurate setup on this. And with this build, you can see it is pinpoint accurate. There is very little movement there. The idle sway is also super low on this, so you can have a very accurate shot. Our aim down sight speed is a little bit slower than the base, but honestly, this is a great aim down sight speed for such an accurate, hard-hitting gun for longer ranges at 278 milliseconds. Our sprint out time is essentially the exact same as the base, so it is a bit on the slower side. You don't want to get caught sprinting with this, but that's okay because you shouldn't be treating this build like that. We also do get a very noticeable range increase, but that doesn't matter. Range is irrelevant on this gun due to the fact that it takes the same number of shots regardless of the range. However, our bullet velocity is noticeably improved up to 1,023 meters per second, which means even at extremely long ranges for 6v6, this gun is going to feel essentially like hit scan. So you can just put your point of aim on target. You don't even really need to lead your shots and you'll still hit where you're aiming. And with this build, I practically just treat it like a sniper rifle that happens to have that extra shot ready to go if I manage to miss that head or neck shot. And this is a really solid build for those longer range maps in the game, like Wasteland or Afghan for instance. This build is quite dominant on those maps. As for the next build I wanted to share for you guys, this one's designed to be a lot more versatile while also staying off the radar. This is my stealth build, and with this we're using the Shadow Strike Suppressor since there's no downsides to this and it keeps us off the radar. We have the DR6 hand stop because there aren't too many attachments that can help with sprint out time on this, and this attachment will help with both aim down sight speed as well as our sprint out speed. We once again have that MTZ factory rear grip, which is going to help us with our idle sway as well as our flinch resistance. We're also using the MWIII Archangel stock, and this one helps a bit with our aim down sight speed. And then finally, I've got the Mark III reflector on this. Honestly, the iron sights are just fine on this gun, but since I really like lining up that perfect headshot, I do like having an optic on this. And with this particular build, it's still a very accurate setup. You can still spam this at longer ranges and still be on target. Our aim down sight speed is 220 milliseconds, which is a nice improvement. That's very fast. It's now competitive with SMGs. However, our sprint out speed is unfortunately still a bit on the slower side at 230 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 350 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. So while this is more versatile than the previous build, you still have to be careful and ensure that you're trying to avoid getting caught in mid sprint, because if that happens, you'll often find yourself in trouble. And honestly, that's really the only downside with this particular build, is the fact that you can't be sprinting around too heavily, but as long as you're controlling for that and hitting your shots, you're going to be practically untouchable with this setup. And finally, this leaves us with one last build to share for you guys, and honestly, there aren't too many different ways to build this while still making a really effective setup. So this is more so just a variant of the previous build, but I call this my aggressive build, if you want to be a bit more aggressive than the previous one. And with this, again, we are using the Shadow Strike suppressor, the DR6 hand stop, the Mark III reflector, and the MWIII Archangel stock. The only difference here is I dropped the rear grip and instead went with the OLEV laser. And the reason I chose this laser for this build is it gives us the best benefit to our aim down sight and, more importantly, sprint out time. Which, like I said earlier, there aren't too many attachments on this gun that can help with sprint out time. And with this, you can see, of course, it's still insanely accurate. I don't think there's much you can do to this gun to make it inaccurate. Our aim down sight speed's also really, really good at 204 milliseconds, and our sprint out time's about as good as you're going to get for this gun at 206 milliseconds, which is definitely better than the previous two builds, so you can get away with sprinting around a bit more often with this. One key downside with this is with that OLEV laser, it is a visible laser, but only when you're aiming down sight, so it will affect your ability to pre-aim things effectively. It's much more for like snapping onto your target rather than getting pre-aimed before you see the target come around a corner. And then, of course, just like the previous build, we are staying off the radar. And there we go. That's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the MTZ Interceptor. As for my thoughts on this gun in multiplayer, I think it's extremely good and arguably a little bit too powerful even. Now, in saying that, it isn't the most forgiving gun out there, so if you don't have the best aim and you often spray and pray at your target, this is just not the gun for you, because as soon as you start missing shots, your time to kill spikes like crazy. But for anybody that's pretty accurate and able to get on target effectively, especially with a headshot, this gun is very hard to beat. Now, of course, these are just my opinions on the MTZ Interceptor, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this gun, in multiplayer specifically, in the comment section down below. Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous gun guides, we've now covered all of the SMGs, assault rifles, LMGs, and marksman rifles. I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.